Hello, everyone, and welcome to More Than Coincidence, Remembering Jesus Christ in Your Story. As the author and finisher of our faith, our Savior writes personal experiences into each of our lives, which can later strengthen, empower, and bring us peace upon reflection. This podcast is dedicated to sharing these anchoring memories from everyone's unique stories in order to collectively remember and testify of the reality of Jesus Christ and His presence in our lives. I'm your host, Lily, and I'm very excited to share these experiences together. Good evening, everybody. Today we have Abigail. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Yes. So I'm Abigail. I'm 28 years old. I have 3 kids, Jay, Zoe, and Maddie, and I'm married. I've been married for almost 8 years. I love fitness, gym stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've completed 75 hard 4 times now, so you've probably seen me walking in the neighborhood. Yeah. What else? I love to make sourdough bread, like I was telling you about, and yeah.
Sweet.
That's
awesome. No, that's great.
Oh, well, let me tell you, I'm a convert. I went to Bible school before I became a convert. Yeah, so.
Well, I'm super happy that you're here tonight, and it's been really fun just catching up. So I'll just ask you the question, Abigail, what memories in your life do you reflect on that prick your heart in remembrance of Jesus Christ and anchor you to Him?
Okay, so I want to share a story from actually Bible college. Share this experience the best that I can. When I was going into Bible college, I was in Wyoming. So it's a town of LaGrange, Wyoming, if anybody knows where that is. It's about 250 people that live there.
It's a very
tiny
tiny
town. So you can
town.
run the whole city within a little bit of time.
Just only one stop sign?
Everybody knows you.
Stop light? Yeah.
Yes. That close. And so it's about 45 minutes from Cheyenne. So if you need to go to the grocery store, you've got to really travel. So I had this roommate that came over to my room one day, and she's like, do you want to go to Denver with us? Or Denver with me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but we don't have a car, so we're going to have to find someone to get us a car. Or let us borrow theirs. And it's about 2.5 hours away. So I wasn't super close to her, but she's like, I like you and I want to get to know you. And I'm like, I don't know if a road trip is a good idea.
Because then we're stuck with each other in case something goes wrong.
If you don't like me 30 minutes in the drive, you got a while with me. And so one of these sweet ladies in our church was like, oh, you can borrow mine. She's one of the I don't know. She had a few kids, but she's like, yeah, you can borrow my car. And I was like, okay, perfect. So we get all ready to go and we're talking and we're having a good time. We make it to Denver and I have a lot of anxiety. Yeah. And so when you get to Denver, it's one-way streets everywhere. And so
yeah, driving there
GPS doesn't really work. You just have to figure out how to. And she wanted to get this iPad case or this MacBook case. I'm like, how important is this? Because I'm on the verge of a mental breakdown to buy this MacBook case.
Yeah. So
we finally make it, whatever, and so she's like, all right, let's head back. And I'm like, okay, perfect. And I didn't have cell service in LaGrange. Your phone doesn't work out there.
Right.
So when I would go into town, I could use my phone. I could text people from back home. I could call people. So that's usually when I called my dad. So I called my dad and we're just chit-chatting and just catching up or whatever. And so we're driving back and I missed something with the GPS. So we end up going a different way. Mm-hmm. And I think we're back in Wyoming, but we're in the wrong part. And so I'm like, all right, Dad, I gotta go. It's starting to rain. It's getting stormy. And we've got to get back or whatever. And so he's like, okay, bye. And we probably have 30 minutes left. So I realized, so my phone dies, okay? And something's wrong with her phone. It's starting to get into the sticks where there's just no service.
Yeah.
And
everything
I'm like,
looks
okay,
the
I
same
think she knows
in
where I'm
Wyoming.
going. Yeah. And so she's like, oh yeah, I used to go and do Bible studies in this town or whatever. We're about to hit that area. So we're check gas. We have a quarter tank of gas left. We're fine. She's like, we'll gas up there. It's this little city.
Right.
And so she knows the pastor there that had a church there or something. These are small towns.
Yeah.
And so she, okay, so we're almost out of gas and we finally get to the city. I'm like, thank goodness. We have a little bit less, maybe 40 miles or something. We pull up to the gas station. It is not a gas station. They're like, oh, the gas station got blown up 3 months ago. Someone set it on fire and it exploded. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because this isn't our car. It's starting to storm. We're in the middle of nowhere. My phone is dead. Our phones do not work.
Right.
And she's like, well, I know the pass to get back to our school. You had to go through a mountain pass to get back to our school.
Which is terrifying.
And yes. But it's starting to storm. So she's like, we'll meet up with the pastor and see if we can maybe stay overnight.
Right.
So she's like, we meet up with him, and like he has a whole family. We
Mm-hmm.
could stay with you. He doesn't offer for us to stay with him at all. Nothing. He's
Uh-huh.
kind of like, well, it's good seeing you guys. And we're just kind of like, oh my gosh, like you're gonna make us go through this mountain pass. I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So I'm just like, I'm freaking out. I'm about to freak out. So we start driving. We're away from the church, and this is a very modest church. Like this, like there is no tank top. It's as strict as Mormons are with clothes. So it's like, so I think I had a long sleeve on, and then I had like a tank top and underneath tank top, and I was like, the window was fogging up, and the ladies, her like defrosters didn't work, and her windshield wipers were old.
Oh no.
So it's starting to like get super frosty, and I'm like, what do I do?
So
I'm gonna pour some
dangerous.
water on it. So I took off my long sleeve, and like the girl next to me was offended. She was like, oh, you only have an undershirt on or something.
You're like,
and
do you want to
I'm
die?
like, do you want to die? We're going to clean this window.
We can't
So
see.
I pour my water on it, warm water, thinking it was gonna fix it. No, it didn't.
No.
It iced it over. It made it worse.
Yeah.
So we're starting to drive, and I'm like, she's gonna see my ugly side of my anxiety because this is so scary for me. And and she's like, I was like, all right, let's just get on the pass. Like, we're going to have to figure this out.
Right.
So about 10 minutes in, she's like just trying to be like I think she was trying to be encouraging godly, like with God, like being like, it's going to be okay. Like, and I'm like, just now's not the time. Like, now's not the time to talk about Jesus. I'm so sorry. That sounds, you're so raw, but I'm like, can we just get through this? And then we can just go back to like our normal selves. Like, this is really hard for me. So anyways, we could not see. I'm talking a foot in front of us. Like, it was pouring snow, and it's a two-way pass, and it's really small when it looks like it should only be one road. And so we keep going, and it gets to the point where I'm like, there's nothing I can do. We can't stop on this pass because there's nothing here. We're almost out of gas. We have no phone service.
Right.
Like, we're pretty close. We think we're pretty close to the school. We just have to get through this path. And I remember praying, like, just stopping, because I'm like, we're driving so slow, we're trying to see in front of us, and we cannot see anything. So I slow down, and I'm just like, if you just, like, God, if you just get us through, like, this little piece, like, I don't know what I'm going to do for you, but, like,
I'm going to do something.
I just need you to get me here. Like, I want to have a family. I want to one day get married. Like, I want to have a future, and I feel like I'm going to die right here, and I'm, like, 18. Like, I haven't even graduated high school yet, because I went to college before I graduated, and it brought me to this point where I was like, my hands are completely tied, and there's nothing I can absolutely do right now, and I just have to trust him. There was nothing other than just to trust him.
Right.
And so I'm like, let's just stop right here and just pray, and hopefully there's not a car coming the other way, because it's such a small lane. And we're just like, please get us through this. And it's crazy because this story came up to me with Peter walking on water. Like, he's looking at his feet, and he's starting to sink, and Jesus is like, look at me. Look at me, and I'm gonna get you to me. And I can get chills talking about this. Like, I just remember him, like, I just heard it in my head, like, just look at me. Look at me. Stop looking at your feet. Your feet are your anxiety, and you're trying to control the situation that only I can fix, and only I can get you there. And somehow, like, the storms calmed, like, it slowed down to where we could see, like, feet above us. We finally got back into town, and I got out of the car, and I was like on my hands and knees being like, oh my gosh, we made it, like, solid ground.
Yes.
And I remember we had this cute little snack shack, like this one guy, Joey, worked in there, and I went in there, and he's like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, we almost just, like, died in this
death experience.
Like, and he's like, you have that little of faith that you thought that Jesus wouldn't get you back here. And I was like, at first I was so offended.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Yeah. Like, I doubted Christ so much in that experience that I just was like, I just came to the idea we're going to die instead of praying. Why? You know?
Right.
And that really stuck out to me. Like our feet are our anxiety sometimes, and we're looking down, and he wants us to just look at him. Like, just trust me. Just trust me. I'm going to get you through this. And I need you to go through this experience for you to trust me. Yeah. And ever since that's really stuck out to me, that, like, a lot of the times I want to control things, but it doesn't always work that way. And so that was, like, a big part of my testimony, was just like, look at me, just look at me. And there's a lot of situations, of course, like I talked to with Andrew being in the Marine Corps, that, like, I don't have any other direction to look, and my anxiety can take over so fast when Andrew's in the middle of the East and I can't talk to him, and you know,
and you're just thinking of the worst that's happening, and you see all of the news articles, and you're like, what's happening? Where is my husband? I'm going to be a single mom forever. Yes. And he's on, you know, his job, he's a machine gunner, he's on the boat protecting it. People are, you know, the enemy is taunting him, and they're trying to get him to shoot, and
I can't talk to him for such a long time. And I'm over here like, I'm here seeing news articles, but I can't talk to you. Like, are you okay? I sure hope. And then I have all these thoughts running through my mind. Like, I cannot take care of these kids without you. Like, I need you. I don't know what I'm going to do without you. And, you know, all those thoughts. And then it's just, you know, calming the storm. And I remember one specific time during the middle of Andrew's deployment, I was just so defeated. Like, we can't ever talk. And this is such a scary time. And I remember sitting on the stairs, like, just like mid-verge of just losing it. And like as a breakdown. And I remember Jace, he was only 2, but he walked up and put his hand on my shoulder and was like, Mom, you okay? And I was like, oh, my heart. Like, gosh. I'm like, yeah, like I forget that like kids are so sensitive. Like they just know. They just know. And you know, again, keeping my eyes on Jesus during that time, like it's just like we're gonna get through this, even though it doesn't feel like it, and it lasts eternity. Time, you know, it goes so slow during that time. But yeah, so that was an experience that will probably stick with me forever. And I don't ever let my gas tank go a quarter tank below anymore. No,
I would say no way.
Who knows
what's gonna happen
when you get to that gas station if it's gonna be blown up or not.
And that's the story you're gonna tell your kids too when you're a little old lady. You're like, back in my day, this is what happened. They're like, why you gotta keep your gas tank so high?
Literally. Why does this car always have full of gas?
Dang, so that's like a really intense story. And do you feel like, I think at least for me, something that I've been pondering on a lot is when we have these really kind of intense experiences, why do we let ourselves forget them? Or not necessarily forget them, but like, why can't we just keep the faith? Why can't we just keep looking? Like, I don't know. Is that something, have you thought about that? Or have you thought about, I don't know. Why do I not look? Why do I not, even though I've had this giant experience? Because I feel like for me, I have had certain experiences like that where it was literally the hand of God. And sometimes I still sit here going, why? Yeah. Like, why are you there? Why are you listening? Do you even care? You know? Yeah. So how do you, having such like a contrasting experience or like a big experience, how are you able to, I don't know, not let yourself get swallowed back into that anxiety and keep looking? Like, how do you? I mean, I still think I do. When it comes to a point where, like, for my anxiety, I've done every remedy, I've done everything I can to calm myself, and it's not working. It's like there's only one less thing to do, is to pray and just. He sees your struggles. Sometimes it feels like it doesn't, though, because I'm like, I'm in the middle of an anxiety attack, and I feel like I'm gonna die and I can't breathe. And like, where are you? Like, why are you letting me suffer like this? This is so miserable. And it seems like since I turned 20, it feels that way. I wish I had the answer for you, but yeah, I just think you'll eventually get to the logic part of the anxiety and be like, okay, we need to pray. There's not anything left to do. And I wish I could tell you that was the first thing I thought of, was like, you know, are you listening to me? You're watching me? Like, I feel like you're watching me suffer, and it's so intense. And you know how anxiety attacks are, and it's so miserable. But you know, I could tell you that there's so many people that I can relate with and have empathy with those experiences. You know, like no one that has, you know, there's not a person that has anxiety that wants to talk to someone that's never had anxiety. Like, I'm not gonna sit and try to tell you my struggle when you don't get it. So it's like experiences like that. It's like obviously I learned a lot from that experience, and you know, being able to, prevent myself from being in that position, but like also being like, hey, sometimes our hands are tied and we need Jesus. A lot of people in this world just need Jesus. There is no other way out. So right. I think just trying to, I wish I could tell you that it was the first thing I thought of. Yeah. But it usually is the last thing for sure. And you know what? I think as long as you get to that point, I think that's all he cares about. Exactly. He doesn't care if he's the first or the last thought. Maybe he does. I don't think he does.
No, he's probably like, come on, Abigail. This doesn't need to take 30 minutes to pray to me.
Oh, what's wrong with us? We need Jesus.
We all need Jesus.
That's how I feel. I feel like, I don't know, even recently, I feel like I've just had such really intense emotions. And I feel like it is so hard when you're feeling these intense emotions to reach out to him and to look for him, because it's like the intense emotions, like they cover my eyes and they cover my heart. And I literally was thinking about it
So I don't know, things have just been really rough, and I've been so angry. I'm not normally like a super angry person,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like recently I've just had so much anger and just so much rage towards my kids, my spouse,
Mm-hmm.
like lots of random things. And I literally was, so I read President Nelson's talk that he gave like 2 years ago about being a peacemaker. And that kind of, it gave me a lot of really good things to think about. But then the other day I was sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is what it feels like when your heart is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you're not allowing the spirit in. But it's not like I even really noticed it happening,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it just, with one thing after the other, and then with all these intense emotions, it just kind of, I just found myself in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's been so hard, because I'll sit and I'll like read my scriptures and I'll be like, please, I really want this to make me feel better, and then
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll try again, and that makes me feel better than reading the scriptures or
Yeah.
praying,
Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know, I think it is important for us to realize that option is always there, and that
Yes.
sometimes even when we try that option, try looking at the Savior, we can
Mm-hmm.
still look, but we might not always feel the peace, and we might not always feel the comfort. And
Yeah.
it's like trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I feel the peace
Right.
that the prophet talks about? I feel like a lot of the times they always talk about how you feel when you go to the temple, you'll feel so much peace. I don't
Mm-hmm.
usually feel peace at the temple.
Yeah.
Like, I feel peace other places. And so I feel like I'm having to learn how to look at him and still feel all of these emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and not feel like a horrible person at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just like another layer of everything recently. I feel like I feel like a despicable human being, because I'm so fortunate to have the gospel in my life. But when I pray, or when I read my scriptures, or when I feel all these intense emotions, it's like, oh, come on, Lily, like, aren't you better than this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're turning to him, but you're not really turning to him. Like, what kind of a disciple of Christ are you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it's like trying to pull yourself out of that spiral hole.
I think that can be like the devil talking to us too, or Satan, like
Right.
being like, hey, because he gets in my head. It's like, in the
Yeah.
perfect time to take advantage of what's in my head is when I'm already struggling and I'm
Right.
already having a hard time. Like,
Right.
when I get anxiety, it's like all these things of probably things that don't even matter, that is like, what about this? Like, what about that? Like,
Right.
no one likes you. No one likes to be around you, which is a big
That's
lie. Because I know
literally-
there are people that do enjoy being around me, and
Right. I am
you
one
know,
of
but
them.
those well, it's just those thoughts of like, he gets in your head. And it's like,
Yeah.
also, I think the times that we're in right now, life is so overwhelming. You know, as a mother, it feels like my responsibility to make sure my kids are healthy and taken care of, and that, that my husband can come home from work and he can vent to me about his job or whatever. Like, I feel like I have to be there for everybody all the time in my own family structure.
Right.
Which eventually you're burned out, and I can't show up the best Abigail for everybody when I'm spread so thin.
Right.
And then on top of that, Satan's taking advantage of like, hey, let's just like remind her in her head that like, you're not a good mom. You don't do this. You don't do this. Blah, 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 blah. Like, over and over. And then, and then it's hard to get Christ in the mix. But like, I also think that Christ just appreciates us trying. And you know what? If at the end of the day, or in the beginning, in the morning, I can give you some of my time to pray, and just even like, I'm not the best at praying often. I can tell you, I do my best to pray when it's time to eat and whatever, and teach my children that.
Yeah.
But it's like, sometimes it's just praying in like the pickup line, or like when I think about it, do it. Because it's like, Satan, if he has a majority of your day to mess with your mind, like, where does Christ fit into that? And like, he doesn't want you to pray. He doesn't want you to read your scripture. So it's like, even if you're showing up, you're feeling like you're not all the way there, or like don't feel like you're showing up as the best that you can, at least you're showing up. And it's maybe that you're spread so thin that you can't show up as great as you want to. And you have a lot going on,
Right.
We all have a lot going on, and it's just, as long as we're doing it, and, as long as we show up, I think that's what's important. And sometimes the places we don't want to go, like, we don't want to take our kids to sacrament, or we don't want to, like today, I think my brain has made every possible excuse to not make it here. Like, I'm like, what am I even going to talk about? Like, I have all these experiences, but like, I think I misunderstood a lot. My brain doesn't connect with my mouth to what I want to actually say, and then people are like, "Is she just like talking a lot again?" Like, shut up.
For the record, you're totally crystal clear to me.
I'm just like talking 10 minutes in Relief Society. Like, I feel like I'm saying what Jesus needs me to say, but it's a lot of words, so hopefully you can condense it in your mind. But yeah, but I also wanted to add too, one of the things I did want to talk about. For some reason we watched God's Not Dead.
I love
it's
that
an old
movie,
but they just uploaded it to Netflix, and I didn't realize that it was such a good movie.
Yeah.
And my Aunt Kelly, she's like she's the one that helped me with like my conversion. She helps me with all my anxiety. She's the one that's like, you need to pray, you need to read. I'm like, all right, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
And but we were talking about God's Not Dead, and I was like, she's like, maybe it wasn't a coincidence that you like watched that. And I was like, I don't think it was, because I totally forgot that this was coming up. I knew it was coming, I just didn't realize it was so soon. In a couple of days I was like, we should watch this movie.
Right.
And he was talking to his mom with dementia.
Yeah.
He was talking about he was like, well, how come I have such a great life, and like, like you have problems or whatever.
Right.
And it really put it into perspective. Like, I feel like I've really suffered my entire life. Like, I really feel like I've struggled. I don't know why. Like, it's just like things come at me left and right, and it's like I've just really struggled my entire life. And I felt like once I got out of like my childhood home that just had a lot of like abuse and trauma, I thought things were gonna be perfect. Right. And they haven't been. They haven't been. Like, I was like, once I'm an adult, I get out of this situation and like, I'm good.
No.
And then all these things were like, you got to learn this and this and this and this and this and this. And
right.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Marriage, motherhood, everything on top of it.
Yep. And so it's like, it finally put it into perspective for me that Satan shows you a lie, gives you this perfect life, and then when it's too late, the doors are closed. Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would rather go through all these problems and all these situations or whatever, trials, right, to be able to like follow Christ. And Satan wants to be a part of that all the time. But it's like, I'd rather go through all these things and see Jesus there, instead of having this great life and like, wow, you go through these trials. Like, for me, you're going through maybe the suffering for me, and it's to teach other people and follow me, to look at me, to trust me. Because I've been through so many things that I'm like, and there's a lot of people that talk about, this was a big point I was kind of thinking about on the way here too. Sorry, I go here and here with my ADHD, but a lot of people talk about like an experience they had that they walk away from Christ. Yeah. And I've had a few of those experiences. I was like, okay, like I had this thought where I was like, how could you ever what's so bad that you walk away from Christ? And a big point in that was God was dead was the atheist professor that he lost his mom to cancer, and there was nothing that he could do about it. Right. And he really hated God for that. And, there's been a few situations that just like with Andrew being in the military that I'm like, why? Like, why? Yeah. And like, I'm not cut out for this, man. Like, I can be so supportive, but like in this sense, it's like, I never see my husband, and then he deploys and he comes back and we don't get an adjustment period, and then he deploys again, and then we come back and then we decide to have another baby. Like, I just don't get a break. Yep. And it was like, there's so many situations that it's like, yeah, I could turn my back on him. I could, but I'm not going to, because in all, he's always been there, and he will always be there. Right. I could definitely have a better relationship with him. I'm learning to have my own relationship with him and be able to pray and talk about my day with him. Yeah. And yeah, it's just like, I think there's a lot of situations that people are so angry with God, but you have to understand that we have free agency for a reason. We get to choose those things, and sometimes choices have consequences. Sometimes we go through trials to learn, and they're awful trials. Yeah. They're so bad, and I'm like, why am I suffering? I don't feel like I deserve this. Like, right. But then I see years down the road, after I've been through so much therapy through certain situations, that I'm like, right, I can like advocate for women. I can help people that have suffered through these types of trials. Right. And like, I can be there for them, and I can give suggestions to how to heal, and like, and
right. I love how you bring up that because I go through these trials, I'm able to sit with those who are going through them and truly empathize with them and be a physical, tangible somebody that the Lord can put into someone's life to act as that figure. And then you can even say, hey, let's look to Christ. Yeah. And you can point them in that direction too, which I think is is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and off of that, I've felt in my life that I've gone through trials to like help people.
yeah.
And actually, I sat down and read my patriarchal blessing for the first time again in a really, really long time. I kind of put it away, and I was just like, kind of like, this doesn't make sense. Or like, I got it when so I got converted at 20.
Yeah.
Got my patriarchal blessing, and then I was just kind of like, okay, like this is so vague.
Yeah.
So vague. And the guy that did it, I'm like, he's so old, does he even know what he's talking about? Like, what is this? Like, this is like a bunch of words of and it's and like if. It felt like.
Yeah.
And then I just like had this thought to like, I was like, my husband was like, let's pull out mine, let's pull out yours out of the safe, and like, let's just read them and see if they like kind of fit together.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. Like, so it says like, I'm a mother of Israel. Like, I'm a mother for other people. And I felt like I've always been so motherly growing up.
Yes.
Just in general with a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, okay, so that tells me like, and I think when I read it a little while, like a couple weeks ago, I cried because I was like, oh my gosh, like to be a mother in Israel, that is so like powerful and important. Like I'm so important. And even though I don't feel that way a lot of the time, I am so important. And to have those motherly qualities and to like help others and be helpful and help people through trials and all those type of things, like what a blessing and like what a gift. There's not anything else I would want more than that. And I hope that with time that I can really nurture that gift. And I think as time goes on and I'm not so needed by like the responsibilities in my life, I can serve others and help others how I want. And just understanding that Christ sees me like, you're a mother of Israel and like you're here to mother, like nurture others and be there for people. And I think all my life people have always been like, you're such a mom, like such a mom, like that's a bad thing, like you know. But it's only because I care, and you know, if I can be there for other people, I will. And the trials that I go through, they're relatable, and like you know, I'm very raw and real. I'll tell you how I feel. I'll tell you my experiences. I don't have shame behind my experiences. They are what they are, and if I can share with you or relate to someone, I will. I'll share it with you because I don't want you to feel alone. You know.
Right. Well, and that's what I
more,
love.
Suffering alone is no like
it's awful.
Worst thing. Suffering alone and just being alone
isolated.
And not feeling like someone gets it.
Right? Because if he can isolate us, then
he can put
we're
any
stuck.
Thoughts he wants. Yeah.
We're completely stuck. I think the trick is, how do you not let yourself get isolated in the first place?
I mean, I think it all starts with fellowship and just us simply showing up to church to just get those bonds and those relationships. Right. I actually, a little side note, I did some studying on I have an eating disorder. I have a really big problem with binge eating. Yeah. And I was kind of doing some studying, and this guy did this study, was like, other countries are so family oriented and we're not. They shared these simple things, like in Italy, when like families eat, they all gather to eat as a family and everybody's greeting each other, and there's all these endorphins being let off by everybody giving hugs and talking. And as they're talking, they're eating, we're making their digestive system work, and they're able to have like body cues when we're done eating and all that kind of stuff. And in America, we just sit down and we eat. We just eat, and we're stressed out, that means our digestive system's not working when we're overwhelmed and stressed. Right. And so it's like all these components, and then, but it was just such an interesting fact that like, we need human connection. Yes. And unfortunately, COVID really damaged that. And I think there's some truth behind why that happened. Was like, they don't want us, like, Satan doesn't want us combined. They don't want us to be united, because united means power. Yeah. And especially when, Satan can weaken mothers. We're the bridge that, puts together.
Kind of the backbone of society.
Yes, we are.
Like, men are super important too, but women like do a lot.
Well, and we're creating, and we're teaching our kids, like, our job solely as as mothers is to nurture and teach our children like who Jesus is. Right. And so when we have that type of role, and if that can be damaged by Satan and being taken that away, the family unit gets destroyed. Yep. Because we're bridging that gap between our spouse and our children, and we're just that middle piece. Right. And we're so important for both sides that if he can damage us, he can ruin the entire family unit. So when we don't have that connection and we're isolated, we're already isolated as mothers, because as we talked about, the book that I mentioned, I forgot what it's called, but it just, talks so much about how important mothers are, and like how they keep literally everything together. Like, it's our job to do that. So when we isolate ourselves, or we get isolated, Satan gets in our minds, and like the smallest thing we can do is just show up to church for fellowship. And then, I mean, God created Eve for Adam for companionship. We need others. We need fellowship. We need connection.
Right.
No, we're human. We need connection.
Right. And I feel like as we do that, as we connect together, I feel like we are then able to better find Christ among us and in the midst of us, and being able to turn to look at him more easily when we are connected and casually but confidently sharing our testimonies and just these small experiences. You know, it doesn't have to be a gigantic general conference talk or a talk you give in sacrament meeting. It literally is just like, I almost died in a canyon and a gas station blew up, but I prayed and Jesus let me get back. Yeah, right? Yeah. Like that legitimately, honestly, it's a lot more
And I
exciting.
got humbled about how much faith I had. At the worst time.
And it's fun, right? Like this is where the connection grows. And so thank you so much for just, you know, being willing to be open and be vulnerable and talk frankly about a lot of these things, and because it's needed. So
well, thank you for having me. I didn't feel worthy to come do this, but I'm like, hey, sometimes I have some things that people need to know or hear.
I've absolutely loved all of the things that you've had to say, and I feel like everything that you've said has been insanely relevant to my life. And so thank you so much for coming. This has been a really great experience, and I hope we get to catch up again another time.
We will, and I'll bring you some bread.
Oh yes, please.
You got it.
Thanks again for tuning into More Than Coincidence, Remembering Jesus Christ in Your Story. Please follow us on social media or share us with a friend. If you have an experience you'd like to share, feel free to reach out to morethancoincidence.rememberhim@gmail.com. I can't wait to hear all of the amazing memories you all have of our Savior. See you next time.